If you have wondered on what is emotional intimacy in marriage or in relationships, if you're wondering why people misunderstand emotional intimacy so much, how high achieving women are sabotaging connection by overfunctioning, how is shame, ambition, and loneliness, finding the struggling thing in our success and our relationships, then you might have got those answers today in our podcast because we have an amazing guest. We have with us Brianna Bass, a board certified clinical sexologist, and she's a former executive who has shared how high achievers navigate modern life stress, anxiety, depression, and years of emotional baggage. But before that, let me introduce you once again to Luxury Unplugged, where luxury meets spirituality. I'm Neeti Keswani, and I host the show where we dive deep into the lives of high achievers, creative entrepreneurs, and conscious leaders who are redefining luxury not only just in terms of wealth and aesthetics, it's also about mindset, purpose, and living a life of intentional success. So, through powerful conversations, we are transforming lives of many, and we continue to do so with each and every episode. And hope you enjoyed this one. And now let's get started with Brianna. Welcome, Brianna.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, and we love to have you here. And we have loads of questions on emotional baggage and intimacy and stuff like that. And you must be dealing with that on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. My clients typically fall into the corporate backgrounds or those that just want more from life that aren't going to be okay with just going through the motions and status quo. So, like with your audience, they want to be as fulfilled as possible in this one chance we get at life.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, in terms of being a former corporate executive and then now a clinical sexologist, how does your background shape the way you're challenging traditional mental health issues?
Yeah, it absolutely ties in. So first, coming from the corporate background, that's a bunch of human behavior and studying it day in, day out. If you want to survive in cutthroat corporate, you better be very aware of body language in the room, tonality, tons of nuances. Be tracking that and then pivoting live. So anyone in corporate has probably become a master over the years of figuring out what do people want? How do I get there? You're always strategic thinking about the next step. So a lot of that bleeds into therapy.
Mm-hmm. So, when people come to you, what is it that they are struggling about emotional intimacy? What sort of
Yeah, there's
things that couples go through, like really?
yeah, they're struggling with emotional intimacy in accessing feelings, accessing vulnerability, especially if you're coming from that corporate background. It's celebrated to suppress or repress emotions, not get
Mm-hmm.
into our feelings. We want to be stoic. We want to be even keel. We want to seem unflappable. However, in relationships, couples, marriage, whatever your situation is, that is the antithesis of deep connection. Deep connection is based on vulnerability, sharing how we feel, being honest, being authentic, letting someone step into our skin and experience what we may be experiencing, having empathy. All those things are not celebrated typically in a corporate environment. So a lot of my clients come to me and on paper they look great. Everything should be fine. Maybe they're in a partnership they're okay with, or they've got a decent job, stuff like that, right? Their health is okay. Why aren't I happy? Why aren't I thriving? Why do I just feel like I'm okay inside? And they're confused because on paper, they should be okay. So why aren't they? So those are a lot of the people that I work with.
Mm-hmm.
And so when the emotional intimacy comes into it, I want to talk to them about, well, how have you been showing up with emotional intimacy throughout the last years? And most often the answer is, I haven't been.
Right. And so, in terms of, you talk about a situation like a before and after transformation. So, what does transformation look like for these people when they come to you? Because they are going through some sort of anxiety, depression, tensions because of perhaps relationship or some workplace stress. So, how do you manage it, and what's the kind of result that we are looking at?
Yeah, the before, so the before client, before our work together, for example, or before this transformation that you're referencing, their hair isn't on fire, life is not in crisis mode. It's nothing so much like that. It's not like TV and dramatic. We're not basket cases, but it's that feeling I was talking about. We're unfulfilled, we feel empty inside, something is missing, we've lost maybe our spark.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps we've withdrawn from platonic relationships, romantic relationships, hobbies. We're just burnt out. So the transformation and what I'm talking about literally or tangibly is somebody that re-engages in those hobbies, reinvests in themselves, gets their mojo back. You can feel it. You can feel their energy has improved. I see clients get promotions at work. The relationships start to become more connected, deeper. Conflict goes down, or perhaps they start dating again or find a partner. So those are kind of the witnessable changes that I see. But transformation wise, you should be starting from a place that you're at and then ultimately going to a place of higher self-esteem, better confidence, stronger, and moving through life in a way that doesn't feel as heavy and as exhausting. That's what I see as far as clients are concerned. And that's what I mean when I say the before and the after transformation. And a long-winded way of saying you should be happier.
Right, right. And so then what is that one exercise that you, or perhaps one tool that you use with your clients that immediately shifts their awareness and, makes them understand that, okay, yeah, I need to have some therapy of some sort to go through this and to get back my spark.
Yeah, I talk with people a lot about the pie of their life. I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but when we look at the pie of our life, it's career, then we have platonic relationships like community, romantic relationships, we have our immediate family, talking like our parents, maybe like our siblings, so on and so forth. I don't know if I said career or not, but that's the pie of your life. You've got your interests in there, your hobbies, things that like make up your identity as well.
Right.
So one of the first things I talk with people about is let's map this pie out and let's see like which slices of this are brightly colored in and feeling really healthy and which ones are a little bleak, a little gray, which are completely barren. And
Mm-hmm.
usually when we have that conversation, we can quickly identify here's all the chunks where stuff is just not going great. This is where a lot of our emptiness, our quote, brokenness, to use their words, may be coming from. So we want to start tackling some of these items. That's more of our hard coded, tangible stuff. And then, of course, we want to talk about their past, trauma, baggage, things like that, and how they're bringing patterns that they've developed into that pie and how it's directly impacting that pie. For example, getting in the way of them forming deep connections with their partner or dating or having what they see as a successful relationship. So an immediate tool would be to look at your pie, figure out, okay, this is a great starting point on where I need to focus some attention and some investment.
Right, right. So let's say if there's a couple that comes to you because of emotional intimacy challenges, whether it's emotional or it's physical, those challenges are there sometimes in the couples. Now, how would you handle that in terms of what would be your approach in rebuilding that emotional aspect? Perhaps physical can still be worked on, but emotional is something which has to come from both of them, right?
You're completely right. The emotional aspect has to come from both of them. When it's disproportionate or inequitable, one party versus the other, it just kills it. It has to work between the two. Now they can show up differently. We've got male versus female, so we've got everything from genders to personality types, all sorts of things. So don't get me wrong, it can look completely different, but both parties need to be participating. One of the biggest things that I teach my couples is that emotional intimacy is not sex. It's one of them, but one of many. There's about 8 forms of emotional intimacy. So
Mm-hmm.
when we're lacking in one category because life happens, so maybe it's the bedroom or quality time because we're busy, we want to invest in all 8 of those types of emotional intimacy so that we've got some equity in the bank, right? So I'm going to drop here in the bedroom or I'm going to drop in quality time, but hey, I've got this other stuff that we can sprinkle in or maintain, or it sort of carries us through those lulls. So huge misconception that I hear with emotional intimacy that it's just that physical touch aspect. It's totally not. Binging a show together counts. Now, there's some caveats. It's not just sitting shoulder to shoulder. Let me give you an example. If you and your partner were really into some reality TV show and you sat and you just gossiped about the people the whole time and just made fun of them and whatever, right? That counts. So that's some connection. We're having this sort of shared interest in that moment. So it can be as small as that. So I invite my couples to start there. It is going to a golf outing, even though one of you is terrible at it, and the other one is sort of teaching the other partner, stuff like that. And then maybe you reverse that the next time with something that the other partner more so enjoys. Also, there's physical touch intimacy, which is different than bedroom intimacy, and that one's huge. So that's hand holding. That's somebody naturally putting their hand on your shoulder or the small of your back as you walk through a crowd or the grocery store. So my point being that it doesn't have to be big and heavy and
Right.
dramatic and candlelit dinners and all these things to create intimacy between a couple.
Right, right. So that makes me just ponder on the aspect that, what are the behaviors that possibly somebody could look out for on the outside when when their relationship is actually, trickling downwards? What is that one thing that should one should look out for, if it's going downwards from an ideal relationship?
Yeah, if you're talking about maybe some warning signs, maybe some
Some kind
alarm
of warning
bells.
signs, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so as far as kind of warning signs, if everyone's different, all shapes and sizes, but generally speaking, for the simplicity of the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
your partner should be who you are compelled to call when things go well and when they go wrong. So if
Beautiful.
you find yourself not wanting to call them, and by call, I mean talk to at home, text, it doesn't matter, right? Swap it for what applies to you. But if they're not the person that you want to share good, bad, and ugly with, I think that that is a moment of pause. Why not? Because if I share something good with my partner, are they going to poke holes in it? Are they going to have a negative outlook? Are they going to bring me down if I share this? Or perhaps, am I struggling with something? But if I share with my partner, instead of them supporting me and holding space for me, they're going to try to solve my problem. Well, did you talk to your boss? Well, did you tell him about that? And that's maybe not going to be your first stop then when something's wrong. You're going to turn to a friend or maybe just keep it within. So I think that's a good alarm bell. If you can assess yourself and how you approach with your
Mhm.
partner anytime something good, bad, ugly happens. Hey, where do I feel myself sort of pulling back or not necessarily entirely leaning into my partner? And that tells you that something's a little bit off. And then to our conversation earlier about the 8 forms of intimacy, look at those, right? So we're strong in these 1 to 2 areas, but in these other 6 areas, not so much. So that's
Right.
also a great place.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. So in that way, I mean, you see, in today's corporate world, everybody's so busy, so tied up in their work situations that stress sometimes is not only pulling you down, but perhaps even pulling down your partner at times. And they may react in a different way. So everything cannot be regarded as a warning sign. But if it has been happening for a couple of months, maybe, is that when somebody should be going in for therapy or just checking in what's happening really with themselves first?
Perhaps I'm biased, but I'm going to say that you should be going to therapy when things are great. I do believe that, right? I mean, cheesy, but what is the saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of recovery or whatever, right? So, um, I see couples that are just dating. I see couples that are considering moving in together, engaged, and I see couples that have been married for 30 plus years.
Wow.
So I think the spectrum all benefit from going into a room, carving out space where we're going to be very intentional and we are both showing up in a way that says, hey, I'm ready to invest in this relationship even if the house isn't on fire, even if things aren't falling apart. We're not talking about infidelity or anything like that, right? We
Mhm.
just simply know that, hey, this is somebody I want to be with. And so,
Right.
why would we not use our resources and pull the levers that we can to make sure that that partnership has the best fighting
Mhm.
chances? Today is so noisy, so much stimulus with our phone, right? Exactly. Career, we're burnt out, all of the things. So, it is so easy now, more than ever in the history of man, for relationships to get off track. There's a lot of competing priorities and competing noise.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So when you work with your clients, whether it is medication that or is it part of the treatment plan, How do you go about the process in your situation when they come to you?
Yeah, that's a great question that doesn't get brought up very much. So as far as medications, that is one of my first questions in every intake with a client is to understand what are we taking? And that also goes for recreational drugs. I will ask, are we smoking, drinking? What's that looking like? All of it is very relevant. I hope that they're honest. If they're not, then I hope they are eventually. And it's just so that I can have a full picture of what we're working with. The medications that you're taking can significantly impact
Mm-hmm.
how you're behaving and some of your thought patterns and the things going on with you. So it's really important that we have open dialogue about that. I will also ask somebody their attitude towards medications. Is this something that you lean ultra conservative about and it's a non-negotiable? I'm not open to that. And then I know, okay, fair. I respect that and I'll honor that. And we don't need to talk about that again. Or is this something that, hey, I'm not ready for now, but I want to talk about later, so on and so forth. So it's always a part of our conversation. But I have noticed a trend in that wasn't so much before, but people are leaning, I think, a little bit more conservative. They're looking for natural remedies, holistic approaches. People do not want to, especially generationally, younger generations. I'm seeing that people don't want to grab the pill. My
Mm-hmm.
generation was a little bit different than that. We've all heard of Prozac Nation, right? But these generations, a couple beneath me, I've noticed that they have a little bit of a different attitude towards substances. I think that's really cool that they're looking into more Eastern approaches and things like that as far as medicines are concerned. But of course, I'm going to recommend, as just anyone would, you yourself, I'm sure, always start conservative, right? So there's a
Right.
partner that I can loop in to really get into the weeds about some of those psychiatric medications like SSRIs and stuff like that. But ultimately, the only time I'd say where I, brought it up maybe again and then consulted outside help or referred that client to bring someone in for that particular niche would be if I witnessed a disorder. So someone who was presenting with schizophrenia or bipolar or something where I felt like that is going to be necessary for this person to be the best, healthiest version of themselves. So that's when we're looking at, consulting with someone else and bringing in a specialist in that regard.
Right, right. I think that's fabulous, Brianna. It has been so lovely having this conversation with you. Hopefully, we're going to have some more mini episodes if this goes really, really well, and our audiences really want to know more about the mutual intimacy questions, right? So, now this is for my viewers. Have you seen how Brianna approaches her evidence-based, deeply empathetic, and radically transformative approach to understanding the emotional, very emotional relationship challenges that we all go through? If you found this interesting, please come back for more and keep watching Luxury Unplugged podcast. All right. Thank you so much, Brianna. Thank
Thank
you.
you.